Okay, so I have the honor to chair the first session. Our first speaker is Alexandra Dmitrienko, and she is kind of a local because her PhD is from TU Darmstadt. Afterwards, she was 2 years at ETH Zurich as a postdoc, and since 2018, she's an associate professor at the University of Würzburg, where she's working on secure software systems. So, you don't need this, right? You do. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. So I am very honored to be the first speaker today, and I'm glad that many people could wake up early. Hope you also had enough coffee. Don't fall asleep, but important that I don't sleep. So I'm going to talk about side channel attacks and other technical aspects. However, I would like to start my presentation with a little background information about myself. I definitely consider myself as a high-tech woman, and my background is Russian, so I was born and raised in Russia, and my master and bachelor degrees are from University in St. Petersburg, from Polytechnical University, State Polytechnical University in St. Petersburg. And after that, I decided to do my PhD and looked for positions abroad and had a lot of luck and had the opportunity to do it in Germany. So since then, I'm like 10 plus years in research, and I have been already in very important research hubs, starting from Ruhr University, Bochum, then Center for Advanced Security Research here in Darmstadt, where I got my PhD from, and ETH Zurich was a great experience. And now I'm an associate professor at the University of Würzburg and established my secure software system research group. So, did you know, probably you know already, that getting professorship in Germany is difficult, generally difficult. And it is double as difficult for a female, especially in a technical discipline like computer science and security. And it is triple as hard for a foreigner because you not only face challenges like typically PhD students face, but also you have to deal with the language, with new language, or for me it was even 2 languages. I had to learn proper English first, then German, and of course there are intercultural differences, so it takes some additional effort to actually come across all those differences. And on this way, there were key success factors which really helped me. The important thing that you have to be passionate about what you're doing. So you have to figure out if the work you're doing is actually something which you like to do all your life. And of course, one has to invest a lot of work in this. So as a PhD student, you have a lot of work generally. And you shouldn't give up, so you have to keep going. And looking back at my career path, I can tell that probably the hardest thing I ever done was not actually getting given professorship here, but getting PhD position in Germany. I think that was like very difficult. So why it was difficult? Because when I spent some years in research, I already knew what is expected from the professor, so I need to do certain things to be competitive. But when I applied for PhD, so there was nobody to help me, so I had to figure it all out, and I was kind of blind. One needs to be also ambitious because you have to select ambitious research topics to be successful. And of course, you need support, and I had this support, for example, Part of my PhD was supported by Erasmus program, typically Erasmus program for master students, but there was a program for PhD students from Russia. And I was also supported by other programs such as Software Campus here in Germany. Also, Fraunhofer Society supported me with Talanta Speed Up program. It was very helpful. Actually, as a result of this program, I changed my mind and decided, instead of going to industry after my PhD, I decided to do academic career. And it is also about luck, and I am sure anyone who does research understands that, because, you know, when you submit papers, it is not only about the quality of the paper, but there is also some kind of random factor involved. So last but not the least, we have to keep ourselves motivated, to keep ourselves going. So we have to set goals which are reachable and try to keep ourselves motivated. So at the beginning of my career, like professorship was too large carrot for me, so I just put you know, the proper size carrot like PhD, and then you can set new goals and continue this way. So what are Hightouch women capable of? And generally they can do all the things what normally women are doing. So during my career, I also had to do all the things like household. I raised a child. I have a son who is now 21 years old. He's a student at TU Darmstadt now, studying computer science. They also can do many things that typically men do. For example, no problem if you need to change the car wheel, or like, don't know, believe me or not, like in Russia, I even once disassembled half of the car engine to replace some parts. You know, nobody would do it in Germany, but in Russia, car service is expensive and work is for free. I would not hesitate to fix the kitchen leak. And I can do many other things, and other women in technology too. So, talking about leaks and fixing them, it brings me to the main part of my presentation. I am going to talk about problems with information leakage in Intel SGX technology and how we attempted to solve this problem. So what actually Intel SGX technology is? Typically, when we have applications running on platform, it has to execute in together with other software, for example, operating system, other applications. And of course, there is a risk if we have malicious software on the same device, it can be compromised. So if the application is security critical, the critical functionality can be isolated in specific sensitive code routines which operate on sensitive data. And what Intel SGX provides, it secures this secure sensitive code in such a way that if the application on this platform is malicious, or even operating system, or even this same application gets compromised at runtime, even the attacker who tampers with memory, they are not able to see what the application does and what kind of secrets it operates on. So it is a great concept. It helps a lot to protect information on systems against unwanted malware. However, it appears that this great concept is vulnerable to side channel attacks. And side channel attacks are a problem. I'm sure that when Intel engineers designed the system, they were aware of the system, but they somehow underestimated the threat. So they suppose that side channel attacks are probably possible, but they are difficult to perform, so the attacker needs a lot of efforts, a lot of knowledge, a lot of resources to do them. And later on it was shown that this is not the case. And when we talk about Intel SGX, there are two types of side channels which were shown. This is the paging side channel attack and side channel attack through caches. So typically, if the attacker cannot look into information processed within Intel SGX protected software through these side channels, the attacker can actually get meaningful information. So what side channel actually is? So in generic terms, we have system which is used by the attacker software and by the victim, and it is not possible for the attacker to directly observe what the target application does. However, they both run on the same system, so they utilize the same system resources. And whenever the victim uses those resources, the attacker can actually observe the side effects and get some additional information. So it gets some information about the victim by observing side effects on the system. So, as I mentioned, two types of side channels were shown. The first was a paging side channel. This side channel is possible because in Intel SGX architecture, the paging mechanism, mapping of physical memory to virtual, is done by the operating system. And it was shown that although with coarse granularity, it is possible to extract information. So here you can see, here you can see that it is possible to actually identify objects on those pictures, although the picture was processed within Intel SGX. And even more severe attack was shown that it is even possible to extract cryptographic keys processed in protected environment. So the attacks of similar type were possible through leakage through the cache. When we look into CPU architecture, CPU typically uses the hierarchy of cache memory, which is much faster than RAM. And when the CPU can be multi-core, for example, and typically cache 3 of cache L3 level is shared between different cores. Certain cores also share or use individual caches, such as cache level 1, cache level 2. There is also branch prediction cache used internally by the processor. And it was shown first that the branch prediction, so all of them, so for example, cache L1, L2 and branch prediction can be used for the leakage on a single core. It is also possible to leak information between the cores through using cache L3 because it is shared. So first it was shown that prediction, branch prediction cache can be misused, and by using the side channel through this cache, it is possible to leak information about execution flow of the program. And later it was shown that L1 cache can also be used, for example, to extract IS encryption key. The first attack was limited in the sense that it required interruption of the enclave execution, and it also gives potential for detection. So we can basically, if we can detect that enclave execution is interrupted, it is a possibility for attack detection. But next attacks showed that it is not even necessary to interrupt the victim process. And further, it was shown that not only cryptographic keys are the subject for attacks, but it is also possible to attack general more general applications, for example, such as genome sequencing. Then there was also attack shown where the attacker actually attacks not from another application, but from another enclave. So this makes the attack even more stealthy. So it is a problem, and because basically those attacks appear to be much less resource demanding than was initially thought, and they can succeed in extracting secrets. And there are mitigation techniques which we know already from general side channel area. For example, it is possible to design algorithms in such a way that they are side channel resilient. However, it requires a lot of expert knowledge and high effort, because if we need to apply this knowledge for every single algorithm which is executed. Another approach is to use annotation-based protections. So we can basically select the security-sensitive code and say that we are going to protect only this code, but we can automate the process. And this also requires expertise, because the expert needs to know which parts of the code are security sensitive to do this annotation. And there is fully automatic approach, oblivious execution, or RAM, and it was implemented for Intel SGX, and although it is convenient in the way that it doesn't require any expert knowledge, any enclave can be protected, it imposes huge performance overhead, in particular up to 220 X performance penalty. So this brings me to our recent work, Dr. SGX, which allows to apply side channel protection in automatic way, and it is doing so through randomization of information in memory. So just looking at this solution in the big picture, we have typically the leakage, which can be monitored by the attacker, but whenever we randomize the memory in RAM, then information which is obtained by the attacker is not useful anymore, because he cannot map it. He cannot reverse the randomization. So the features the solution has are as follows. First, it is a compiler-based solution, meaning that the developer just needs to compile enclave with our extensions for the enclave to be protected. Second, it doesn't require any code annotations, so it can be applied by non-expert developers. Third, it can continuously re-randomize the memory locations at runtime, and the protection provided can be balanced through a security parameter, and by shifting this parameter, we can get different trade-offs between the protection and performance overhead. So just showing you very high level how it works. Assume we have here the memory layout, objects in the memory located like this, and after re-randomization, we are going to shift them in the memory. And to drive this permutation of objects in the memory, we use format preserving encryption scheme with IS as a block cipher, and because Intel processors, they provide IS acceleration in hardware, we can do that entirely in hardware, so there is no trace on the memory which can be absorbed by the attacker. And this process is going on at runtime, and the intensity of this re-randomization is controlled by the re-randomization window. Of course, the tighter the window is, the better protection and but that also would influence performance. So we did some tests, performance measurements. Here we used NBench for performance, and if we re-randomize enclave only at the beginning of execution, but not in runtime, we get geometric mean about 4x performance penalty. And if we re-randomize it at runtime, of course, the tighter randomization window, the higher performance penalty, but geometric mean, what we measured, can be up to 12x, which is much better than ORAM solution. So to conclude, Intel SGX has been shown, so side channel attacks are a real significant threat to Intel SGX, and while they were deemed too difficult to perform, research showed it otherwise. And the solution which we propose, Dr. SGX solution, it can provide a generic protection for Intel SGX enclaves, and it is configurable and developer friendly, doesn't require any extra annotation, so the developer can just run it, and it is much more efficient than ORAM. So thank you very much. That was my last slide, and I'm happy to take your questions.
Oh, it does. Okay, thank you. We welcome a few questions from the audience now. Okay, I have one.
Everybody is sleeping,
yes,
I suppose.
So. But your alarm went off, so you're awake now. Okay, I have one small question. So you mentioned the overhead in terms of performance.
Yeah.
But energy consumption is also very important, for example, in mobile devices. So what do you expect that the impact of your Dr. SGX solution would be on energy consumption, and does the battery lifetime of a mobile device?
We didn't estimate it on mobile devices. We targeted like SGX-enabled platforms. Typically, it is a bigger processors. However, I can tell you that this overhead applies only to the enclave, not to the entire application. So when you consider entire application altogether, the overhead is going to be much, much smaller. I think you have to always think about like your security requirements, and definitely if you put some code in protection area, we are talking about security critical application. And I think like even, I understand that 12x sounds quite heavy, but when you consider the setting that you don't need to use it for entire application, it is very much reasonable. And very good thing about this approach that the developer doesn't have to think about it, doesn't have to, you know, look through the code, find security sensitive parts, because this manual effort is typically error prone and typically requires expert knowledge, which many developers today don't really have.
Okay, thank you. So let's thank, one more question? Okay. Did I miss it before?
No, maybe people are waking up.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Thank you for that talk. I have a question about, I think I missed some fundamental knowledge to understand why the memory randomization prevents a timing side channel attack against the branch prediction unit.
Right.
Can you elaborate on this a little bit, please?
Yeah, I can elaborate because so typically we talk about memory, so about secret-dependent memory access. Assume you have some table and different different elements in this table are going to be accessed, and this difference is due to the secret you want to protect. And this kind of pattern is quite often used in many applications, for example, in IS implementation, in RSA implementation, in genomic sequencing, and. And so our goal here is to break this link, so the attacker knows that if the application accesses the second line in this table, it is probably the key. The key is going to be, the key bit is going to be 0 or 1 or something like this, right? But if you can break this link, the attacker sees that something was accessed, but due to randomization, he doesn't know if it is second or first element in the table. So, and this is the reason why actually this protection works against this type of attacks.
Okay. If there are further questions, then I suggest to move them to the break. So let's thank Alexandra again for the nice talk.